So managing a tested earnings strangle. Now, I have this situation happening in JP Morgan right now. Like, this is a trade that I have on right now that we're gonna manage, and we're going to adjust together as a team, as a unit. But this is something that's going to happen to you, whether you have one on now or not. It's going to happen to you at some point in your trading career. There's no question, right? Like, you trade enough, you get involved in enough earnings trades. You kind of mix it up with these earnings announcements, which of course we have all the heavy hitters coming on down the chutes the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think next week is Netflix and Tesla, I think, are next week. And then the following week is the real heavy hitters, your Apple, your Amazon, your Google, your Meta. But then, of course, the real heavy hitters, your Procter & Gamble's, your IBM's, your McDonald's. Like, I think those guys are coming on down the chutes the following week. But nevertheless, you're going to have a tested strangle or 2 or 5 or 10 in your trading career. What do you do? Like, how do you handle that situation? Well, I thought, let's talk about that, and then we'll take what we've learned and we'll apply it to my JP Morgan situation. So, Ryan, go ahead and bring us into the slide deck here today. And this beautiful Friday afternoon, it's 77 degrees outside. So sometimes an earnings strategy, such as a short strangle, can quickly move away from you from an explosive stock move, just like JP Morgan. Here's how to adjust your strategy if that happens. Now, I wanted to be a man of the people today. I wanted to appeal to all people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, from all nations. So I'm not just giving you my thoughts. I'm obviously giving you all of my thoughts. But I thought I would also kind of sprinkle in just a little bit of Bomb Nosnoff, just a little bit of Pony Bobista, just to keep everybody happy and everybody feeling good about their chosen management style and management approach. So you can see I have a couple of columns. More patient, a la Dr. Jim. More aggressive, a la Bomb Nosnoff, Pony Bobista, Shooter McGavin, those types of individuals. So how should you handle a strangle that is busted from an earnings move? Well, I effectively want to work through at least 3 scenarios, and then we'll kind of see where the wind blows us when we take a look at JP Morgan here in a couple of minutes. So number 1, what do you do if you're not tested? So this is actually the situation that I find myself in with JP Morgan. Now, people have been emailing me, people have been tweeting at me, earlier today, like, all right, what's Dr. Jim going to do with this JP Morgan strangle? And Ramon actually hit it, on the head. He said, Dr. Jim is going to do nothing. Well, he is correct. I'm not going to do anything, but I do want to spend at least, 9 or 13 minutes talking about why I'm not going to do anything. If you're not tested, that simply means the stock is between your 2 short strikes, right? Now, even if it's really close to one of your short strikes, which is the case that I find myself in with JP Morgan right now, I suggest doing nothing. I suggest that, I posit that the strategy is actually working. The strategy is actually doing what you have politely asked it to do. So give it a chance to keep doing more. Give it a chance to keep working for you on your behalf for your betterment. So that's kind of the do nothing approach. What about if you're not tested and you want to be a bit more aggressive? Like, maybe you watch a little bit too much of, Bomb Nosnoff. Maybe you watch a little bit too much of a Pony Bobista. Hey, I've been there too, right? I've absolutely been there. We all make mistakes. What you can do is you can roll when you get to 20 delta. So when you start a strangle, right? When you start off a strangle, it's a neutral strategy. You effectively have 0 delta. So when you accumulate 20 deltas on either side, it depends on which side the stock would be moving. Once you get to 20 deltas, you could consider being more aggressive with rolling the untested side in. So in this case with JP Morgan, as we're going to see in my portfolio in a minute, this would effectively be, me rolling my puts up to tighten up that strangle. Now, of course, in classic Dr. Jim style, we have to at least examine briefly the gimmies and the gotchas of both. So if I don't do anything, what is the gimme? Well, the gimme is, I maintain all of the real estate between my 2 short strikes. What's the gotcha? The gotcha is I'm not maximizing extrinsic value, and I am going to remain a bit more directional on the trade. What happens if I am more aggressive? What's the gimme? Well, the gimme is I'm going to be building up and stockpiling and really maximizing that extrinsic value. Well, what's the gotcha? The big gotcha is you're exposing yourself more and more to whipsaw risk. You're exposing yourself more and more to just natural ebbs and flows in the market, where the market comes back and just a very normal, kind of back and forth stock price movement. And now all of a sudden you end up being tested on the other side. And so you have to kind of be ready to be quite nimble and quite agile when it comes to, managing these types of strategies, which is quite surprising because I can't speak for y'all. But when I think about Bomb Nosnoff, the words that come to my mind are not nimble and agile, but nevertheless, I digress. What if you are tested? Well, if you're tested on, in either scenario, whether it be more patient or more aggressive, I think the slam dunk, layup move that all of us would agree on is rolling out in time. Right? I can add duration to the trade. I can roll out in time. I can boost my extrinsic value. That way, that's going to soften up the Greeks. It's going to give me more credits to play with. It's going to widen my break evens. Everybody agrees on this. I mean, one of the core tenets of Tasty Live, Tasty Nation, is duration over direction. And so if you roll out when you're tested, then you're really tapping into that philosophy and that relationship. What if the stock moves so aggressively such that one of your sides, it's not really just tested anymore. It is actually in the money by some significant amount, right? Could be a couple of dollars, could be $5. Significant in this context is going to be largely dependent upon, the stock price and the strikes that you have. And there's a couple kind of, fluid factors that you would have to take into account. But what happens if you move in the money? Well, again, this is where, a Dr. Jim might differ from a Bomb Nosnoff. I prefer to go, we're going to agree on going inverted with our strangles. Like, going into the inverted strangle is a classic move to make right now to really kind of, boost the extrinsic value, take more risk off the table, and really neutralize that directional risk. However, I personally prefer, and I'm going to show you what I mean by baby inversion and full inversion here in a minute. I prefer to choose baby inverted strangles. People who have been following the show for a while, you know what I'm talking about. We've done these before. I haven't done one in a while because, as luck would have it, and this is pure luck, I have not been in an inverted strangle in at least several weeks now. So that is 100% luck, but I'm sure there'll be another one around the corner anytime. That it's probably going to be this JP Morgan strategy, actually. But once the stock moves in the money to where the strike is in the money, I like kind of sandbagging in the stock price and choosing a baby inverted strangle. To me, this is a more patient way of adjusting the strategy, which allows you to tap into marketplace cyclicality a little bit more effectively. Now, is there another way that you could do this? Of course. Right? You can be more aggressive with your inverted strangle, and you could roll like right up to the at the money strike. But I'm going to show you what I mean by this in JP Morgan here in a second. We're going to have to kind of pretend and use our imagination because, the stock hasn't gone in the money yet, but I think we'll be able to get far enough to where this will start to make some sense to you guys. You go to a full inverted strangle where you choose the at the money strike. Now, again, gimmies and gotchas, where are we at when it comes to these two things? Well, if I choose a baby inverted strangle, I'm not going to be locking in as big of a loss, but I am going to be more directional. So there's, a gimme. And there's a gotcha. If I choose the full inverted strangle, I could be locking in a loss and I'm going to be less directional. So I could be locking in a loss. That's the gotcha. I'm going to be less directional, a lot more neutral on the strategy. That is going to be the gimme. I guess another gimme and gotcha here would be a gotcha with being more patient is I'm not collecting as much extrinsic value, and a gimme with being more aggressive is I will be collecting more extrinsic value. Now, which one are you going to choose? Which one should you choose? Well, this is my show, and so I'm going to give you all my take. Now, I know that a Bomb Nosnoff, a Tom Sosnoff, a Pony Bobista, a Tony Batista might not necessarily agree with this, and that's okay. That's what makes a market, as they say. Should you be more patient or more aggressive? I personally think it largely depends on your trading style and your temperament. I actually don't know that there's an optimal point here. I actually don't know that there's many optimal points that exist at all in the world of trading. I mean, there's some things that we've really systematized and really kind of made as black and white as we can. I mean, getting in at 45 days to go and, certain levels of portfolio theta and delta theta ratios and things like that. But even still, I mean, these are largely just reference points. I mean, these are largely just really, really good reference points to utilize. I think it's really difficult to actually, discover points of optimality, points of true optimality in the world of trading, because it's always games and gotchas. It's always trade-offs. It's always gives and takes. It's always gives and gets from a Jimmy Chill fans out there. And so I don't know that there's a better or best option when it comes to being more patient versus being more aggressive, being more aggressive. Now, naturally, the people that, gravitate to one side are going to say, oh, that's definitely better. And here are all the reasons why. And people that gravitate to the other side are going to say, no, my side is better. And here are all the other reasons why. And I mean, I think that's good. That's fun. That's what makes a market. We all, do what we do for reasons behind doing what we do. And so it makes sense to have, a good solid defense of how you're choosing to trade. But I don't think that in this situation, there's a clear-cut winner. So Ryan, go ahead and bring us back into the portfolio here. Let me show you guys with my JP Morgan trade. Let's talk about this just a little bit. NASDAQ coming back to zero. And if this thing goes unched, it's over, guys. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm not coming back next week. Like, it's over. If we take a look at this JP Morgan, now it's definitely gonna be unched. If we take a look at this JP Morgan trade, so again, we're gonna have to use a little bit of our imaginations here on this Friday afternoon, because I'm not in the money yet. So right now, I have not been fully tested. And so when I start to explore like going inverted, or I start to, explore, the baby inverted strangle, the fully grown inverted strangle, etc., we're going to have to kind of use our imagination in terms of, where the stock price might be when I would choose to do this. So if I go into the trade page here, so again, just to be really clear, because I have not been tested. Now I know JP Morgan, I mean, it's breathing on that 140 call strike. I mean, it's right there, man. Like you can like reach out and you can touch that 140 call strike. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sit tight. I'm going to wait. I'm going to absolutely wait. It might happen Monday. It might happen by the close today. It might happen really, really soon. But I like the strategy and the adjustment approach to not do anything. And so I'm going to sit tight and do nothing. But if we take a closer look at JP Morgan, you can see that, here's my 120 strike. So let's say that, well, let's talk about a couple of things. So number one, right? Some of you might be wondering, well, wait a minute, Jim. What if, let me go back to the positions tab actually. So if I go into the positions tab, so you can see that I've actually picked up a pretty good amount of delta on this strategy. So I'm minus 40 delta, which makes sense because, one of my options is nearly 0 delta. That's going to be the short put. The other option is nearly minus 50 delta. That's going to be the short call. So it makes sense when you net those two guys together that we're going to be somewhere around like minus 40 delta. Okay. So if I wanted to roll the untested side up, I'm not going to do that for the reasons I've already talked about. But if I was going to do that, how might I do that? What might I look at and what might I analyze when it comes to that? Well, if I go into the trade page here, I would probably want to look to where can I get to that would really, kind of neutralize that delta if I wanted to, be purely neutral on the strategy. Well, here, that's going to be, I would effectively be taking my 120 strike at a 5 delta, and I'd probably roll it up to maybe a 135 strike. I probably wouldn't go all the way to the straddle, although you could. You go all the way up to the 135 strike, then you're left with a 135, 140 strangle. Now, that would neutralize your delta. That would bring in a pretty nice chunk of additional credit. I mean, you roll in from, let's see here, 25 cents right there, all the way up to $2 right there. You pick up another $1.75. So, I mean, that's a really significant, really sizable credit that you would be collecting on that adjustment. That's a gimme. That's a huge gimme, right? That's a great gimme. You're maximizing extrinsic value. You're really getting even more time decay, kind of working for you. The gotcha here, though, is, man, you now have basically a straddle on your hands. You have a super tight strangle on your hands. You only have 135 to 140 in terms of the distance between the two short strikes. So you've given up. You've effectively surrendered all of the real estate between your two short strikes, which I think is extremely valuable. Now, again, if you want to be more aggressive, then this is what you would do. And you would just, be ready to be, nimble, agile, all these just natural Tom Sosnoff characteristics. You'd be ready for these things. You're ready to kind of engage with these features and characteristics. If, however, you want to be a bit more conservative, a bit more patient, you could do nothing, which is what I'm going to do. But let's also explore, and then I want to get to all y'all's questions, man, before the market is truly unched. This is unbelievable. Let's just say that JP Morgan, let's say this thing went up to, I'm even going to grab my Final Jeopardy pen. So let's say that JP Morgan is now 138. Let's say that JP Morgan went up to 150, which this could happen, right? I mean, this could happen next week. This could happen, later today. I mean, this could happen, sometime fairly soon. If that happened, then this option, this 140, this guy would be in the money now, right? So now I'm not in a situation where I'm not tested. I've actually been pretty significantly tested on the call side. And so now I need to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? How am I going to handle that? And what's my next move? Well, this is where going inverted to some kind of inverted strangle makes a lot of sense. Now, what do I mean when I say a baby inverted strangle versus, a fully grown inverted strangle? Well, again, we're pretending that JP Morgan is at 150. So these prices that you see are not going to be indicative of what the prices would be if JP Morgan was 150, because right now JP Morgan is not 150. It's only 138. So you got to kind of work with me in terms of using your imagination and kind of, extrapolating forward, out what the prices might be and what it might look like. But I would take this 120 put. I take this guy right here. And if I rolled it up to, I'm going to grab two different colors. If I wanted this to be a fully grown inverted triangle, I'd probably roll it all the way up to the 150 strike. Because, keep in mind, if the stock price is 150 and my strike price is 150, this is going to be my at the money strike. And we know the at the money options have the greatest amount of extrinsic value. And so I would be maximizing my extrinsic value collection. I would be neutralizing my directional risk quite a bit. And so this is probably, the most aggressive strategy. I suppose you could also put forth, I'm going to roll even above the at the money strike to really neutralize my directional risk. You could do that too, but that would not be maximizing extrinsic value. So I think this is probably the best example, best version of a fully grown inverted triangle. Okay, what if I wanted to go to a baby inverted triangle? Well, I'm going to grab a different color for this one. For me, this would be maybe rolling to like the 145 strike. So you can see this is not the at the money strike, right? This is going to be, still a little bit out of the money from the standpoint of if the stock was at 150. If the stock was at 150, then a 145 put is still out of the money. So that's actually an O. So if if I'm in a situation where, the 145 put is a little bit out of the money because the stock's up to 150, I kind of like this situation because what ends up happening is I'm a little bit more directional to the downside, but my width of my inverted triangle is not as wide as it would be if I went to the fully grown, and I might have greater potential for profitability in that cycle. And so this is largely why I choose to sandbag the stock. This is what I meant by sandbagging the stock. If I roll up to the 145 strike, the stock is at 150. I'm not going all the way quite to where the stock is. I'm still kind of counting on a little bit of marketplace cyclicality, which, don't get me wrong, you can get burned. Right. Of course. We're trading. You can get burned doing all the things that we do. Right. That kind of goes without saying. But you need to make sure that you understand what you're signing up for here, which in this case, it's being a little bit more directional. So I hope this made sense to you guys.